Welcome, everybody, to week 3 of the live series that I've been doing for the last now, this will be week 3, obviously. So, the last few weeks. The first week, we talked about communication styles and why communication breaks down within our relationship specifically. Week 2 was breaking down the trust issues and the barriers that we have with that, but also how to rebuild trust within relationships. So if you missed any of those two, make sure to check that out on my page, uh, at Vanessa or at Dr. Vanessa PhD on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe if you're interested in these. And moving forward, I will continue to do them if there's enough interest, because I actually kind of enjoy coming on here and sharing with you guys some of these things. And I hope that they're helpful. So let me know if they are in the comments down below. But for today, we're going to get started. And I'm going to be talking about understanding your different attachment styles, or the different attachment styles. And we're going to be going through the four main attachment styles, what they are, so that you can see which one you relate to the most. And then we're going to talk about emotional triggers and stress responses. And then we're going to talk about how to become more secure within our relationship. So if you're interested and ready to jump right in, let's get started. All right. So, first, we need to talk about what an attachment is. And by definition, an attachment is an emotional bond that we form with others. But this is rooted in our early relationships with our caregivers or your parents. So, how we were cared for, how we saw love displayed for each of us, it shapes how we connect with others in the future. But not only that, it also determines how we feel about closeness in relationship with others. So let's go into the four different attachment styles. Now, the first one is the secure attachment style, and the other three are insecure attachment styles. So, secure attachment style is when you are comfortable with closeness, but also your own independence and self sufficiency. You are trustworthy of others. You communicate your needs clearly. You stay calm during conflict, and you have that understanding of, okay, there are going to be times where we're not just going to disagree. We're not going to agree on everything, right? There are going to be times that we're going to disagree. And during those times, I don't have to fear that you're going to abandon me or leave, because I have that trust within you. And hopefully, you have that within me. And that's why we can have conversations and communicate our needs clearly if we're more secure. Now, according to research studies, there are 50 to 60% of people who identify as having this attachment style, aka being secure. Now, I do need to let you know that these are self reported. So it's individuals stating that they believe they are secure, and secure shows up in different ways. And although the research shows that 50 to 60% of the population identifies as being secure, that may not necessarily be the case. So that's where we're going to jump into the different attachment styles and what they mean, what it looks like. That way you can understand what your attachment style is and how that impacts how you are specifically in romantic relationships. So let's dive into that. Now that we understand a secure attachment and generally what that is, let's go into what an anxious attachment style is. Now, with those who have an anxious attachment style, there's a deep fear of abandonment, that you're going to leave. You're worried that your partner doesn't care enough about you. And so, needing reassurance is probably a lot of where your behaviors stem from, right? Needing reassurance. Maybe you over analyze their tone, the things they say, the things they do. Maybe you're feeling uneasy or unsettled when you believe your partner is being emotionally distant from you. That causes a little bit of anxiety to come up. And different examples of this is maybe you check your partner's messages. You reread text messages to see if maybe they sound upset or they sound a little bit off. Just being hyper aware of certain things that maybe someone with a more secure attachment isn't aware of or isn't hyper focused on, right? And specifically with this attachment style, anxious individuals who have this attachment style usually grew up with inconsistent caregivers. So Sometimes love was there and available and accessible by their parents or caregivers, but not always. And so that inconsistency of the love from their caregivers is why they may be hyper aware or hypersensitive to what you say, what you do, your tone, your behaviors, because they're scanning to make sure you're not going to leave, you're not going to abandon, you're not going to stop loving me. Right. So there's a reason for that. Now, let's switch over to an avoidant attachment style. And individuals with this specific attachment style, there's a discomfort when it comes to too much closeness or when it comes to vulnerability. So, usually, this shows up in ways where they value their alone time, they value their independence, they shut down during conflict, right? And they may see your needs, right? Your emotional needs, they may see that as too needy, too much. And so usually what they'll end up doing is they need space. They need to go. They don't want to engage in those deep conversations because again, it is too much. And so they need to step away. And so usually they'll disappear when it comes to things on an emotional level, when they feel it's too tense. Now, avoidant adults usually grew up with caregivers who were really emotionally unavailable or they were emotionally dismissive. So, how do we understand emotions? How do we understand how to relate to others, how to express what we need? Growing up, we learn that through our caregivers, the first people that we see this from. And so if your caregivers or parents were not emotionally available for you, even if they were able to provide everything else, right? Shelter, food, resources, but the emotional availability was not there, or it was sporadic, or it was dictated based on what you did or didn't do, then that leaves a child knowing this isn't consistent. So if it's not consistent, what do I have to do to get it back? And obviously, they can't communicate those things in real time. It's just an emotion. And then kids act on that. So it then impacts us as adults, specifically in our romantic relationship. So that's when most people start to see their triggers come up, is specifically when they're in romantic relationships. So let's go over to the last one, which is fearful avoidance. So this is known as a disorganized attachment. And within the name, fearful, avoidant, I want you to include both an anxious attachment and an avoidant attachment into one. So you can only imagine how they want the closeness, they want to have that close relationship, but that's also the point of fear for them, right? So that means that not only are you craving and desiring love and affection, as we all do, at the same time, you don't trust it. So with their partners end up feeling very confused. It's like, okay, 1 minute you're good, 1 minute we're in love, we're doing great. And then the next minute, it's gone. And if it's confusing for their partner, you can only imagine how confusing it is for them internally, right? So, with that, we have to talk about the different styles. Now, when we talk about the four attachment styles, remember we have secure, and then we have the three others that are insecure attachment styles. When that happens, we get triggered. And specifically, like I said, in relationships, we have emotional triggers and then we have stress responses to those triggers. So you might be familiar with some of them. We have fight, flight, freeze, fawn. You might have heard of this, maybe you haven't. So a fight is arguing, demanding things, or pursuing things such as reassurance. Let me know that you're not going to leave, right? With flight, there's a distance, there's a withdrawal, and there's difficulty in having emotional conversations. That's the flight. I'm gone. I'm out of here. Then we have freeze, and this is where there's a complete shutdown, and the person may end up feeling like this: numb, stoic. And fawn is when you go into sort of people pleasing mode of, let me just keep the peace. It's not worth it to talk about what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, what I'm experiencing. So let me just agree with you, even though that means I'm self-abandoning. But in those moments when you're triggered, fawning shows us that we just want to keep the peace, even if it's to our own detriment. And that could be very unhealthy, but we won't get into that. If you want me to make a video on the different emotional responses and triggers, I can do that because I have a lot to say, but that's not what this live is for. So, how do we go from any of the three insecure attachment styles to a more secure attachment style? Which that is the goal if you want to have healthy, successful relationships. But how do we do that in simple ways where it's not overwhelming, where it's not so much information overload, right? Hi, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I just saw that in the chat. Okay, if you guys have any questions while we're doing the chat, let me know and I will answer them. But let's go into the four things that we can do to actually work on becoming more secure. Number one, self awareness. Self awareness is key. You have to be able to notice and recognize this is my attachment style. I identify with one of the insecure attachment styles. And I know that because these are the signs that I display. Once you do that, then you can actually ask yourself, okay, when I am triggered, am I reacting from a place of fear or am I reacting to the present moment, to what's actually happening in front of me? And a lot of times, just asking ourselves that question alone can save us a lot of heartache and a lot of things that we can't unsay, a lot of things that we can't take back and undo because of the heat of the moment, right? The second is practicing emotional regulation. So, different techniques like grounding, being able to practice breathing in the moment, being able to label and call out your emotions for what they are instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm angry." Let's learn to go a little bit deeper. What do you mean you're angry? We all know that anger is a surface level emotion. Let's go a little bit deeper into that. Where does that come from? Are you actually hurt and it's coming out in a form of anger? And so being able to regulate ourselves emotionally is half the battle. The next one is open communication. Either one of the insecure attachment styles are going to need open communication. Why? Because it replaces the assumptions that we all make with directness, with clarity of, no, actually, this is what's really going on, or this is where I was coming from, instead of feeling as though you have to make up your own narrative in your mind in order to make sense of what's actually going on. So, an example of that could be letting your partner know, listen, when I don't hear from you, I start to worry. I start to get anxious. Let's work on together figuring out a way to where we can stay in communication and just check in on each other, right? That's just a very lighthearted example of being able to state, hey, it's not you never do this and you always, and you, the person's going to get on the defense immediately. And we kind of talked about this in week one. However, if you can come from a place of understanding of, okay, I am triggered, self awareness one, I am triggered when this happens. Now let's work together. How can we work together as a couple? We're in a relationship. So we've agreed to do this, go through life together, if especially if you're married. So then how can we work together? There are things that I need to do to work on, but there are things that we can do together in a relationship. What are those things? Let's work through it. That way your partner feels like you're including them, but that you're not blaming them, that you're not putting all your stuff on them. Because how would you feel if it was a reverse? Someone was putting everything that they were feeling onto you. So, the last point is developing consistent and safe relationships. We have to be able to choose partners who are reliable. If they say they're going to do something, they're a person of their word and they're going to do exactly what they said. They come through. They show you that they care, not just through their words, but through their actions behind it. And so, healing, what most people don't understand is that healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in relationships, which is interesting because that's the same places where we get the most triggers in relationships. But also, healing happens through repeated experiences that let you know you are safe. It is okay. That's it. And so, when you're able to have consistent and safe relationships, you're able to develop that secure attachment, no matter which of the insecure attachment styles you start off with. So that is essentially all of the points that I wanted to hit for today. We reviewed what the four attachment styles are, what the behaviors are behind them, what to actually do when you feel triggered, and what you can do to go from an insecure attachment style to a more secure attachment style. So I know I have some questions in the so let me get to those. What do you do if your partner is an avoidant attachment and shuts down? That's a great question. So we know that with avoidant attachment style, there is a fear of emotional closeness. And they have this pride within their independence, their ability to deal with things on their own, work through problems on their own. Why? Because a lot of their upbringing was based on having very inconsistent love, but also mostly not having it at all. And so they had to learn how to figure everything out on their own. So most individuals who have this attachment style avoidant, they by them distancing themselves, they're giving you exactly what they would want. So a lot of times they feel that they are doing the best they can for you. They truly do because that's what they would want, right? We love others how we want to be loved. However, especially if they're in a relationship with someone who has an anxious attachment style, that's not going to work. They're going to find that it's not going to help. It's going to make things worse because the person who has the anxious attachment style, they're like, hey, why are you running away? You're tapping into my biggest triggers. My biggest fears is abandonment. You can't run away. You can't. That doesn't help me. That helps you. It doesn't help me. So then it's up to the both of you to figure out, okay, where are we both coming from, and how can we meet our own needs? Step number two, self-regulation. But then how can we actually come together and help each other? And that's where couples therapy comes in, which is actually going to be really helpful because you can understand your attachment style, your partner's attachment style, and then talk about that in real time of how to work together in a way that makes sense for you. Because what works for one couple is not going to work at all for the next couple, right? But also working on your own attachment style, understanding where the insecurities, the triggers come from, because we can control us. We can't control our partner. And so if your partner is the one that's shutting down and they're avoidant, yeah, you can bring it to their attention. Hey, whenever we have a disagreement or there's emotions involved, you dip, you leave, you're gone. I don't hear from you. That's not helping. And so now that I'm bringing this up to you, it's up to you to either work on it so that we can work on us and I will support you. But again, we can't control what somebody else does. We can just provide support, but also not to the point where you're neglecting yourself. And that's where I think we get confused and we get into the fawning mode that we talked about earlier, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode of, well, let me just keep the peace. They're uncomfortable with talking about things. So let me just not say anything, even though I need to talk about this, right? So I hope that was helpful. I am going to continue to do these lives, as I said, because I actually really enjoy them. But if you guys have any recommendations on things that you want me to talk more about, let me know in the comments as well. I will.